There are some stories in the Bible that, when we read them, we shake our heads about how backward and obtuse the people were, and how different we are from them. But when we dig just a little deeper, we find that we are not so different from them after all. That's the case with today's story from the Old Testament, this one from the book of Exodus. And it concerns a sin committed by the entire community, a sin we think no longer affects us, but really, it does. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Saturday, February 24th, 2024. The books of Genesis and Exodus are a rich source of stories about the faith. There are stories of great heroes like Abraham and Moses. There are stories of villains and scoundrels. There are stories of sins, both great and small, and it seems that no one is exempt, not even Abraham and Moses. The book of Exodus tells one of the most important stories in the faith, the story of God's rescue of the Hebrew people from slavery in Egypt and the giving of the law. Standing at the distance of a few thousand years, some of these stories may seem to have little to do with us. Perhaps no other story illustrates this than the story of the casting of the golden calf in the wilderness. In case you don't recall the details, the story begins with Moses returning to the holy mountain, Mount Sinai, where he once received the Ten Commandments and where God now gives him detailed instructions about the building of the Ark of the Covenant, along with other pieces of furniture for a traveling tabernacle the people are to set up wherever they camp in the wilderness. Moses remains on the mountain for over a month, and the people become restless. That's when trouble begins, and that's where we pick up the story. When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered around Aaron and said to him, "Come, make gods for us, who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." Aaron said to them, "Take off the gold rings that are on the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me." So all the people took off the gold rings from their ears and brought them to Aaron. He took the gold from them, formed it in a mold, and cast an image of a calf. And they said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt." It's mind-boggling, isn't it? Think of the things they have seen. They've seen the plagues God sent to afflict the Egyptians, locusts, frogs, the Nile turned to blood. They've seen the deaths of the firstborn of all the Egyptians. They've been freed from slavery in perhaps the most powerful nation in the world. God has provided both food and water in the desert to sustain them on their journey. And perhaps most vividly, they have seen the Red Sea parted as they escaped from the Egyptian army. You would think that they would by now have total and complete faith in God. But let Moses be absent for 40 days, and they seem to lose all faith, urging Aaron, Moses' brother and lieutenant, to make gods for them. They seem to need some kind of tangible thing in which to place their trust. Taking their jewelry and melting it down to cast a golden calf seemed to suffice. Now to us, this all seems very distant, not only in time, but also in the reality it portrays. After all, we don't cast golden calves for ourselves. We don't worship idols made of wood or stone or metal. By definition, that means we don't place our trust in idols, right? Well, not so fast. Idols don't need to be as obvious as golden calves to be idols. Idols are whatever we place our whole trust in. For some, it is charismatic political leaders who promise what they can never fully deliver. For others, it is social or political causes or ideologies, even otherwise worthy ones that they think will usher in the kingdom and finally bring peace and justice into the world. For others, it is capital markets or military might or even just economic security. All of these things have their place, but when we make any of them the source of our hope, we, like the ancient Hebrews, have cast our own idols. We have made these things our golden calves. Perhaps more than any other theologian in Christian history, John Calvin, whose bobblehead keeps watch over my right shoulder, understood the pervasive and universal nature of idolatry. He called human nature a perpetual factory of idols. He included in this even whatever Christian talismans we use to remind us of our faith, including crosses. This may be going a bit too far for us, but it still reminds us that idolatry is the problem of placing our ultimate trust in any powers or objects other than God. It is really a matter of misplaced trust. So before we dismiss the ancient Hebrews out of hand, we should make a careful accounting of our own misplaced trusts. If we're honest with ourselves, we will find them popping up everywhere, and they don't need to look like golden calves. And now may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.